Hey everyone and welcome. In this video we're going to be having a look at an interview that Julia Hartley-Brewer had on Talk Radio with Liz Truss, who is the International Trade Secretary, that's been doing a sterling job up until now. Julia in this pretty much says everything. Now, what I will say, I can't actually discuss the lurgy or the jibby jabber without getting a strike, so I'm going to leave it to Julia to do all of the talking on this one, but I think she does a sterling job and it reveals quite a lot of really hidden facts from the government. Check this out, everyone. It is also quite a long interview, so I've cut it down to the important bits for everyone. Please excuse it.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about that, but first off, just in terms of specific to India, obviously, we have sent, as you said, oxygen and sent some help. Lots of talk about whether or not we should be sending some of our vaccine supply there as well, given the rising cases there. Although I like to say per million people, it's a huge country. It's a fifth of the world population. Per head of the population, far lower than anything we saw at either of our two peaks, either last spring or this January. Should we be sending some of the vaccines that we're going to be giving out in a couple of weeks to 30-year-olds to send to India to give to their most vulnerable, frail elderly?
Well, we're on track to deliver vaccines to all of the adult population by the end of July. We've already done 50 million vaccines here in the UK, but we're also contributing to the COVAX programme, which is delivering vaccines across the developing world. And of course, the Indians are a major vaccine producer. So we are working with the Indians, working with the World Trade Organization to try and get that supply ramped up, because we are only going to be safe when everybody in the world is vaccinated. We are only going to be safe when everybody in the world is vaccinated.
We are only going to be safe when everybody in the world is vaccinated.
And the UK is a key part of making that happen.
So with all due respect, that's an absolute nonsense. We're only going to be safe if everyone in the world is vaccinated. That's not true. My vaccine works whether or not someone else is vaccinated or not.
But we want to go back to a world, Julia, where people can travel freely, where borders are properly managed. We don't want to continue with things like our travel bans and so forth.
That's a political choice, Secretary.
Well, it's not just a political choice, it's an economic choice, because as Trade Secretary, I know that people being able to travel for business is actually generating jobs and growth here in the United Kingdom. 64% of our economy is trade. Exports and imports.
But we also know
we
that
need a strong global economy.
We do need a strong global economy, but we're not going to get to vaccinate every single person in some of the poorest countries in the world. We're not going to be vaccinating everyone in Syria.
Well, I think that's completely defeatist, Julia. If you don't mind
I think
saying.
It's realistic. The Health Secretary, your colleague Matt Hancock, said on January the 7th, we went into the lockdown, we were rolling out the vaccine. He said once the most vulnerable people have been vaccinated, and he meant 70 plus, not 50 plus, including my age bracket, and they've had their 2 vaccines, he said that we would cry freedom. We've still got another 7 weeks to go till June the 21st. And the Prime Minister has said there is a good chance, but no guarantee, that we're going to be legally allowed to hug people we don't live with. You are someone who has battled for freedom, for liberal values, free trade, free people making free choices all your political life. Do you not realise how insane it is that we have these restrictions on our life when yesterday 1 death was recorded from COVID?
Do you not realise how insane it is that we have these restrictions on our life when yesterday 1 death was recorded from COVID?
Of course, Julia, it's incredibly frustrating to have all these restrictions in place.
It's insane.
But what we need to do.
Do you not think it's insane? One
person
was recorded to have died yesterday in the UK, and we have 67 million people have restrictions on their lives. That's insane.
I think people can appreciate that we don't want to end up re-importing the vaccine.
The virus.
There are lots of dangerous. The virus. Sorry. There are lots of dangerous variants.
There are. There's yet to be a variant that doesn't that the vaccine doesn't work on, though.
That is absolutely correct, but we can't be complacent. We need to keep developing the vaccines. We need to make sure that we have the proper procedures in place, and we do need to make sure that any opening up is irreversible, because the worst possible scenario would have to be going back to more restrictions,
But that
which none
would
of us
be
want. So
that would
I
be a
completely
political
agree
choice.
with you,
No,
Julia.
no, I'm
we want
sorry.
to see the economy
This-
opened up. But we
Liz Truss, this idea that this is going to be forced on the government, these are political choices. Advisors advise, politicians make decisions. These are political choices. Advisors advise, politicians make decisions.
completely appreciate.
You
the
think that's sane
frustration.
and reasonable?
We want to see life go back to normal.
Can go
But
back
what
to
we
normal
don't want
today.
to do-
It can go
what we
back to
don't
normal
want to
today
do-
if you chose.
What we don't want to do is jeopardise the progress we've made.
How would it jeopardise the
And I
progress?
think-
How would it jeopardise the
if-
progress? 50 million jabs given out. All of the most vulnerable have had their second jabs. How would it jeopardise the progress?
What we don't want to see is re-importing the virus or the re-emergence of a difficult strain.
What's that got to do with
which
people
we're
hugging
not
each other
able-
and opening pubs indoors? What's that got to do with it?
So that the decisions we make are irreversible.
They're not
and
irreversible.
Don't jeopardise.
They're not
the
irreversible.
process.
You could bring lockdown back in the autumn.
Well, we don't want to. We don't want to. We want to be in a position of eradicating this virus.
We want to be in a position of eradicating this virus.
We're not
This is
going
why,
to.
by the
No.
way,
No. So
Back
we.
to my.
Sorry. No.
back to
Let
my-
me clarify. Do we now officially have a government zero COVID policy?
We have a policy, and overall, and this is my point about the virus across the world, is we need to defeat this virus.
We have a zero COVID policy. That is not official government policy. You use the word eradicate. No, we're not learning to live with this as an endemic virus that people largely don't die from. You're talking about having a... Is that a conversation the Cabinet has had and has agreed? Because I would like to know that as a voter.
Well, we have a very clear roadmap, Julia, to open up the economy, but in a way that doesn't allow the re-emergence of the virus. And that's the policy I've just laid out.
Are we
I'm assuming that's a yes then.
Are we eradicating the virus? In which case, do we have a zero COVID policy, or are we going to learn to live with the virus? We can't have both.
We do have a policy which is reducing the prevalence of the virus and opening up the economy, but in such a way as we never have to go back to more restrictions. That's what we're talking about.
Could you guarantee, hand on heart, that we will never see any lockdown restrictions ever again in this country as a result of COVID? Because I don't think the Prime Minister would offer that guarantee. Could you?
Well, I'm not going to get a crystal ball out and predict the future, but what I want to do is minimise.
We're not allowing people to freely
Which is
trade.
why we never want to be in the position of having to put restrictions in again.
Because the vaccinations
Which is why
don't
we
work.
have to be cautious.
Do you think the
Of course-
vaccination policy works?
Of
I
course,
think
the
the vaccines
vaccination
work.
policy works.
So why would we be in the same position again?
Well, I'm not going to predict the future path of the virus.
So you think the
or
vaccines
future-
might not work?
Well, we are. There's no evidence that they don't work against the future variants.
So we could reopen.
But we have to. We know what's happened over the last year, that progress has been made, and then new variants have emerged, and we don't want to be in the position of having to reverse opening up.
Okay.
That is the difficult judgment that the government is making every day.
None of
Julia.
the new variants
And the public understand that.
The public have been frightened out of their living daylights by the government and their adverts, and that's why they think it's far more dangerous than it is to be out and living their
I think
lives.
the British public have a lot of common sense, Julia.
I think the
And
British
I don't
public.
think-
No, you don't think what?
Well, I don't think your judgment that they've been duped is right. I think the British public have a lot of common sense, and they understand the reasons why we are making the decisions we are.
Yeah, we're going to have to disagree on that. I think the entire
I think we
British
might
public-
disagree.
We
on
will.
that,
We
yes.
will.
Now, I don't know about you, everyone, but I don't know what people she's talking to. Should we have a look at what the actual people think of all of this? Let's have a quick look, shall we?
the unshakable belief that the government is slowly eroding their basic freedoms.
Says it all, doesn't it? Now, I know what I'm getting from all of this. I know who I won't be voting for on the next election. Stay sane, everyone. I'll see you on the next one.
And I do believe that we have rotten politics, and I'm not using that as an exaggeration.